Hey everyone, in today's video, I'm going to show you the one go-to-market system that I've used to help generate over 1,000 qualified sales appointments for my business and for my clients. Now, everyone is talking about scaling go-to-market. They're saying you need to hire a bunch of SDRs, or they're telling you you need to use AI in order to scale your systems, right? Both approaches and relying exclusively on one or the other is going to get you absolutely crushed. And here's why. Hiring more reps, you're looking at 70K per year minimum in salary, 3 to 6 month ramp times, 33% churn. If you're going all in on AI, you're likely just bolting an AI system on top of a broken system. Now, the brutal truth that nobody is actually talking about is that it doesn't matter if you have the best, most skilled SDR on the planet or the best, most advanced AI sales agent. Both of them are going to fail completely if you drop them both into a broken system. Now, in this video, I'm going to show you the exact system, make this super, super clear as to what you need to do, why you need to do it, and why this is a problem in the first place. So let's dive into it. If you don't know me, my name is Isaac Wood. I'm the founder of Levergrowth.io. We're a B2B go-to-market agency working with B2B companies to help them grow their top of funnel so they can acquire more customers from cold leads all the way into becoming a paying customer. All right, so let me paint a picture for you that'll make this crystal clear. So imagine your go-to-market is a boat. Now, this is your boat. Pretty good looking boat, right? Your destination is your revenue goals. So maybe that's getting your first $1 million annual revenue. Maybe that's $10 million. Maybe it's even $100 million. Now, your sales reps, these are the guys actually rowing. They're paddling in order to get you to your goals, right? And so for years, the conventional wisdom was very, very simple, right? Want to go faster? Simply add more rowers. So companies just continue to keep hiring. They hire more reps, call it 5 reps, and then 10 reps, and then 20 reps. Ultimately, the idea is like more muscle, more speed, right? Great. So then a brand new technology came, and let's call it AI, right? So AI is going to be what we're learning about now, right? So AI shows up. This is a steam engine revolution, right? So everyone's saying now, why have 20 rowers when you can have a steam engine that does the work of 50? The promise, it's simply pretty intoxicating. You go further, you go faster, you have less of a team, right? So what does every single CEO, revenue leader do? They rip out their rowing crew, they bolt on a new shiny AI engine, and they expect to cruise from Europe to New York in record time. Does this remind you of anything, right? This is what's actually happening, right? So you're actually sitting in the middle of the ocean, your engine's running at full power, you're burning through fuel, you're simply just not moving. And worse, you're actually sinking to the bottom of the ocean, right? Because no one bothered to check if the boat is actually working or if there's big holes in the bottom of the boat, right? Most of these companies have massive holes in the bottom of their ships, right? So water is pouring in faster than any amount of rowing or any new engine can compensate for. So example, right? Your hole might be your ideal customer profile is completely wrong, right? You're trying to sail to Asia, but your compass is pointing to Antarctica. Your messaging doesn't resonate, right? You're using a sail that's made of completely of concrete, right? Your handoff process is broken, right? Your rowers are paddling in opposite directions, or something like your follow-up system has gaps. In other words, you're dropping your prospects overboard mid-journey. Here's your prospect right here in this little lifeboat, just trying to survive, right? So here's the brutal truth. It doesn't matter if you have 50 world-class rowers or you have the most advanced steam engine ever built. If your boat has holes, you're going to the bottom of the ocean. Simple as that. And so while you're frantically bailing water out, wondering why your expensive new AI isn't working, your competitors, or the ones who spent their time to fix the holes in the bottom of the boat first, are already docking at their destination. So the question becomes, how do you find the holes in your boat before you waste another dollar or another second on more rowers or more AI or trying to get a new steam engine, right? This is where people get it completely wrong. They look at their dashboard, they see, hey, revenue's down, and immediately jump to solutions. we need better reps, they say, or we might need more AI, or again, we're going to need better scripts. That is going to be a challenge and a problem. So this is what it's actually happening when you're just trying to slap a solution on top of a problem, right? It's like the doctor prescribing surgery before running a single test. So let me show you exactly how to diagnose your go-to-market like a doctor diagnoses a patient, systematically, without guessing, and focusing on the highest leverage, biggest impact challenges first. So let's go through the 4-step go-to-market methodology, right? So the first thing you want to do is just think about the symptoms. You don't only want to trust these. So the thing is, CEOs don't always know what is wrong, or revenue leaders, whomever is a leader in your company, right, running your revenue. You might think, hey, our leads are garbage. Our reps aren't closing enough. We need better targeting. Our competitors are undercutting us on price. Here's the problem. Those symptoms lie. They're not always the answer. Just like when you have a headache, the problem isn't always your head. It could be something like dehydration. You could be stressed out. You might have eye strain. Could be a dozen other things, right? So your job is really to ignore those obvious complaints and look at what the data is actually telling you. Next step. You want to collect data from multiple angles. So what most people do is they look at a single dashboard and they think they understand their go-to-market. That's like a doctor checking only your temperature and telling you, hey, you're healthy, right? Here's what you need to audit instead. Think about high level, right? Your funnel metrics. So what is your lead to opportunity conversion rate? What's your opportunity to actually qualified conversion rate? What's your qualified to close one rate, right? How long is your average deal cycle? What is your win rate by lead source? So, right, what's your win rate by cold email, by cold calling, by paid ads, by content? Understanding all of these different data points is going to give you a lot of a much better understanding of the full picture and allow you to diagnose your issues and your challenges much better, right? Next step, prioritize by impact and likelihood. So once you have the data, most people try to fix everything all at once, right? So that's a recipe for chaos. And so instead, you want to organize your findings like this, right? I'm going to just draw a little picture for you guys. So let's think about this in terms of like a little graph, right? So you want to think about things in terms of impact and probability, right? And you want to think about things like this, right? So you want to first focus on those high impact, high probability fixes first. So you want to start fixing things up here. So that's the example of 40% of your qualified leads never get followed up because your routing in your CRM is completely broken, right? Next thing you want to think about is, higher impact, lower probability. So that's like a quick test. So this is going to be something like your pricing might be too high, but again, like that's going to be harder to evaluate. Then you want to think about things in terms of like low impact, high probability. So that's going to be something like your email templates, your subject lines can be slightly better, right? Lower impact, low probability. Ultimately, this is just something that you want to ignore in general. An example is like just changing the color of a button on your website, right? These things are all potential changes that could have measurable differences, but the key and the focus is you want to be solving for the highest impact, most probable challenges first, which will give you the greatest downstream effects, right? So then the last one here is just going to be testing a single variable at a time. So what this means is, in most cases, you destroy your progress when you do a bunch of things at once, right? You change your messaging, you hire a bunch of new reps, you're implementing all these new tools, you're updating your processes all at the same time. So it really makes it difficult to understand what is actually driving the change, right? So this is when results improve or get worse. Hard to know, right? The rule that you want to follow is simply just one test, one variable. You want to measure everything you can and then see how things change. Fix the biggest holes first, measure the impact, then move on to the next one, right? This is a systematic approach. This is going to help you go from guessing to knowing exactly what's broken and how to actually fix it. Let's talk about this diagnosis. I'm actually going to run through some of this for you guys because, you know, we're all about being actionable here, and let's dive in. So this is going to be relevant for you if you're running cold email. This is going to be relevant for you if you're doing cold calling. I'm going to do examples for both of these benchmarks and how to fix it. This is also applicable for you if you're doing cold DMs like LinkedIn, you're doing Instagram, or if you're running paid media, you're doing paid ads on Meta, you're doing paid ads on Google, right? These principles will apply. Ultimately, it's understanding all of the main conversion steps inside of each funnel and being able to solve for those conversion steps, be able to diagnose the challenge, fix the challenge, move on to the next one, right? So let's go into this conversion cycle for cold email. Let's start here. Okay. I'm going to show you the exact conversion model that I use to diagnose where your holes are hiding, right? These are the benchmark that separate the boats that float from the ones that sink, right? Here's the math. Ideally, the benchmark for conversion rates and what you want to think about for cold email success is lead to meeting ratio. So what lead to meeting ratio is how many leads you need to reach out to in order to book a meeting. So what I typically shoot for is one meeting booked for every 1,000 prospects. So let me break this down. We can show you exactly where your campaign is going to be bleeding leads and how to spot it inside of your own data. All right, so the first step here is going to be your inputs, so your sends. So no matter what, you're not going to be able to understand if this is working or if it's not, if you don't have enough input data. So typically, I recommend sending at least 500 emails a day, upwards of 1,000 a day. You can do it at lower rates, but ultimately, the less volume you have, the longer it's going to take for you to see meaningful data, which allows you to get meaningful conclusions and meaningful results, right? So once you have an input and you're consistently doing your inputs, let's think about the next stage in the funnel. And so in this case, it's going to be your replies. So what I'm typically seeing for cold email campaigns, and this has changed over time, especially as deliverability has gotten more challenging. But there's a couple years back where reply rates, just plain reply rates, were in the teens, in the 20%. Now that number has gone down dramatically. Now what we're typically seeing for a really strong campaign is going to be 3 to 5%. What you should expect, though, from your campaigns is likely in the range of 1 to 2%. And if it's in this range, then you know you're on the right track. And so basically what's happening, if you're anywhere below 1%, you're running into deliverability issues. So what do I mean by deliverability? That means your email is hitting spam. And so that means that you want to check your domain health. If you're below 1%, the biggest challenge and problem is likely going to be relating to your deliverability. So this means your emails are hitting spam. You're not actually getting into the inbox for enough people to actually reply to you. Now, some indicators that I look for, right? You want to just get people to reply at all. They don't have to be necessarily good replies. They just have to be replies. If you're getting out of offices, that is also an indication that you're hitting the inbox. It's best case, you want to be looking for actual replies from real people, right? Again, below 1% deliverability issue, anything above that, you're probably okay. It's going to be a range depending on your offer quality, your list quality, your campaign copy quality as well. And that's really the key indicator here. Now, if you are less than 1%, you want to go back and look at your domains, fix the DNS settings, make sure that it's all looking good, make sure that your campaigns are validated, meaning your list is validated. You're only sending to valid emails. You're not sending to catch-alls. And if you're sending to catch-alls, you're verifying those catch-alls. Sure, you're not sending to any invalid or bad emails, simply. So that's replies. Assume that, if you're in that range between 1 and 5%, you're on the right track. So the next one here is going to be your positive reply rate. So the big number that you want to be looking for is 10%. So 10% of replies are positive. So what this means is assume you're getting 50 total replies. That means that 5 of those total replies are going to be positive. This is an indication of your product market fit. So this means that your message is hitting the right inbox. Those people are interested in what you have to offer and they're replying positively, right? If this number is below 10%, here's what your challenge might be, right? You might have an ICP mismatch. So you're hitting the wrong prospects entirely. Your message market fit is completely off. So you're talking about problems that these prospects don't have. Your value proposition is not clear or it's not compelling enough, meaning the prospect doesn't care about what you're telling them they can get in working with you, or you don't have enough social proof. Right. So you're not using case studies that resonate. So usually, the case study is not aligned or the result's not good enough for the prospect in this case. Right. Okay. So assume you're getting 10% positive replies. If you're not getting 10%, again, you want to go back through and update and look through those changes. Right. Next step here is going to be your call booking. So what I typically recommend is if you're getting 10% positive replies, you should be booking anywhere from 20 to 50% of your replies into actual meetings. Now, obviously, the high end is going to be better. The high end will be better than the low end. But, if you're booking at 20%, that's not bad, right? So that means that going back to the original example, if you have 5 positive replies, if you have 20% of those folks actually booking in, that means you'll get 1 booked meeting. Ideally, that number is closer to 50%. And so in that case, you're booking between 2 and 3 of the 5 total replies. Right now, if you're not hitting those numbers, here's likely the challenge. First and foremost, response time. So speed to lead, in other words, is what this is. Basically, that means that you're taking too long to reply to interested prospects. This is the single greatest indicator of conversion success. The faster you can get back to the leads, the better, right? If you're hitting them back immediately when they've replied to your email, that means they're in pain. What you've said to them resonates. And because of that, you can capitalize on that attention. You take too long, the conversion will go down. Now, another big thing you want to focus on is your booking friction. So in some cases, you want to add friction purposefully to your funnel to increase your overall lead quality. But just assuming your targeting is spot on, you're making it too hard to schedule. So usually what I like to do is include a couple times in the reply. Say, hey, I'm available today, later today, this afternoon, or tomorrow morning between X and Y time, and then also include a calendar link. Usually I use Calendly. Calendly makes it super seamless. They can just book their time in, just ask for an email and a name, and then have your calendar available, right? That's usually the way that folks will reply back. Now, again, if they're not booking in, they're not seeing the value. So if you have told them, hey, you want to see a demo? Hey, you want to see a lead magnet or a Loom audit? If they reply to that, you share that back with them and they're not booking in, it likely means there's not enough value or you haven't proven the value or you haven't substantiated the reason why they should actually want to take a call with you. So you got to improve your process there, right? Then also, again, it's like if they're not ever booking in, you got to look at your credibility. Do you exist online? Do you have content? You make YouTube videos? Do you post on LinkedIn? You post on Twitter, Instagram, whatever your preferred platforms are? Are you posting there? Do you have online reviews on Trustpilot or G2? Do you exist? If you don't exist, people aren't necessarily going to trust you in the same way. Obviously, you exist, you're a person, but if you don't exist online, you might as well be a ghost. So building that credibility as kind of a dark SEO funnel is really important. So making sure that you have credibility online is absolutely essential. All right. So show up rates. This is our next one here. So what I say the typical show up rate should be 80%. So what this means is if you're not booking at 80%, you have a few challenges. Your confirmation process is not dialed in. You're not sending the proper reminders. You're not confirming the time. You're not sending them reminder emails using Calendly. That's why it's so simple. You just automate those. You send at least 3 of them. You got to give them some context before the meeting. You got to show what you're doing, why you do it, and how you do it, and the social proof behind it, right? So what that means is proof, process, and yeah, proof and process are super, super important. So if they're showing up to the call, great. If they're showing up, they're not really sure what's happening there or why am I even on this call, it usually means you haven't provided enough of that information up ahead of time. So what you can do is you can create automated flows using tools like ConvertKit. You can use ActiveCampaign. You send them a few emails before the meeting books, again, giving them the context, what you do, why you're better than the competition, some social proof substantiating it, some FAQs and pre-objection handling, basically. So this allows your sales call to be so much more smooth and streamlined. And they hop on the call with a 80 to 90% understanding of what it is you do versus, beforehand where they're like, all right, give me the whole thing end to end, right? So if you're below that 80% benchmark, you want to be fixing the confirmation process. You want to fix the context that you're sharing beforehand. You want to fix your qualification, right? So oftentimes people don't show up because they're just simply a bad fit. So make sure that you are, in fact, booking in with the right titles. So, you know, um, yeah, just you want the right titles. Pretty simple. And then the last thing too is like you might not have an availability on your calendar. So if you're only available for an hour or two a day, it's just way more likely that the time's not going to work for them. And so at the time they might have booked in, but because one reason or another doesn't work for them anymore, they might not they could potentially just not show up. So those are really the things you want to focus on when it comes to show up rate. So the last thing here is going to be your qualified rate. So this means that you actually take the sales call, you're able to do enough discovery to understand, is this person a good fit for us? Would they actually benefit from our service or our product? And are we actually making an offer to them? So again, I like to just shoot for 50% here. Right. So going back to the funnel, right? We have 5 interested replies. Let's say half of those replies are interested. We booked in 3 meetings. We have a 80% show up rate. Let's just call it 2 of the meetings book in. Now we have a qualified rate of 50%, right? So one of the leads in this case are going to be qualified. And so again, qualified. Um, so if they're not showing up qualified, there's likely some challenges in your process around like your lead magnet. So you're attracting brokies, for lack of a better word, just people who can't afford your service, means that you're just attracting tire kickers, people who are really not buyers. So that really means you need to improve the quality of your lead magnet. You need to make it a higher level. You need to improve the quality of your messaging, meaning like your messaging needs to be resonant with the high quality buyers. If you're talking about super low level, super cost focused, hey, we're the low cost provider, you're going to get people who are looking for low cost solutions, right? If your messaging is much more premium positioned, then you're going to be attracting higher quality, more qualified buyers, right? So again, thinking about your lead magnet, thinking about your discovery. So you got to make sure that you're asking the right questions. You haven't identified the right pains, and they don't necessarily have the budget or the authority to do so, right? And so this all goes and is included in your targeting and your messaging. So this is really, really important. So if this is below that 50%, you're getting all these really low quality leads, then again, it's usually going to be something around your targeting. It's usually going to be something around your messaging. And so again, like let's just kind of summarize. and talk about bottleneck analysis. So now you understand all of the benchmarks for this process. How do you actually think about tackling these, right? We'll look at which stage has the biggest drop off, right? So if it's the low reply rate, things like your targeting or your messaging is off. If it's a low positive reply rate, then it means that you're solving the wrong problem. If it's a low booking rate, your follow-up process needs work. You need more value in that booking process. If your show rate's low, means that your confirmation, your reminder system, your time to leads not good enough. And then if your qualification rate is low, you're just simply attracting the wrong people. I mean, just go back, look at your targeting, go back, look at your messaging. Now, most people will try to fix everything all at once. And again, the winners identify the biggest leak, they plug that first. So if you just solve one of the biggest challenges and you improve the most important stage by 50%, your overall conversions don't just go up 50%, but everything else down the line also gets and benefits from that increase as well, right? So conversely, you think about the reply rates, you have a 5% reply rate. If that goes up to 10%, every single step down the way, you go from one ultimately qualified deal to 2 qualified deals. Simple as that, right? And this is why systematic diagnosis beats random optimization every time. Cool. So now let's go into the next one. Let's talk about cold calling. Because I know a lot of you are doing some kind of outreach. You're also doing some kind of call follow-up. And if you think the math for cold email is brutal, wait until you see the cold calling conversion. Here's the thing though, when you fix the holes in the system, ROI is absolutely insane. Cold calling is still one of the highest and best ways to get in touch with your decision makers and to get in touch with buyers directly. Create a instant connection with them because again, they can hear your voice. You can actually have a conversation. You can even qualify them a bit in that initial call, right? Here's the math. To close one deal from cold calling, I would expect you're probably going to be needing to be reaching out to around 800 to 1200 different people, right? How that math actually plays out in a real scenario. So first one, again, think about your inputs. This is going to be your dials. So in most cases, I'm targeting a 10% connection rate. So anything below 10% means that you likely have a data quality. And so that means that your list is not good. So you have the wrong numbers, you have disconnected lines, you have gatekeeper heavy companies. You just need to find a better data source, use Clay, find it yourself, buy a better list, or simply just dig in a little bit deeper and figure out what is causing this bad data, change a provider, something like that. Next thing you want to think about is calling times. So in terms of the time of day, it's hard to specifically time it, but with more data, you will be able to understand when people start to pick up. This varies by industry and it varies by time zone, but you want to make sure that you want to be calling when people are available. So when you're calling early on, call throughout the day, start to track when you're getting those actual connects. And that's going to give you a better indication of when you should be calling. Likely it's earlier in the day, likely it's toward the end of the day, usually the middle of the day are a little bit more busy for folks. They're in meetings. So you want to just build around that. Again, geographic targeting is important. Now, if you're on the East Coast and you're calling at 9 a.m., that's 6 a.m. on the West Coast. So you don't want to be calling into the West Coast companies at 6 a.m. You're probably not going to be getting many pickups, right? Another thing, one thing you also want to just keep in mind is just persistence, right? 1 attempt, 2 attempt, might not get in touch with them, but if you call someone, 10 times, there's a much higher likelihood that they're going to answer your phone over time, right? So let's now talk about conversions. So the conversion in this case is going to be your conversation, right? So what I mean by a conversation is people who have answered the phone and they've agreed to hear your pitch. So a good number in this case, it's going to be 50%. So this means that, of all of the people that you're calling, you get 10% people to actually answer, and then you get 50% of people who allow you to actually give your pitch. And this is because if you're getting in touch with the right people and they're not allowing you to actually give your pitch, then you're just never going to get downstream and you're never going to get those conversions anyway. So you really want to focus on those first 15 seconds. What that means is your opening hook. You can't be boring. You can't be overly salesy. You can't be super generic. You got to have a little bit of research done. You got to know who it is you're actually talking to versus just blindly calling into a list, right? Oftentimes a pattern interrupts. So, not breaking their mental script of like, oh God, this is a sales call. I got to really get defensive and I want to just deflect this person away as possible. So usually what we do instead is permission-based approaches. So, instead of just going, hey, is this name? Cool. By the way, this is our company and this is what we do. Like you should take a meeting with us. Instead, you want to ask them if they have a second, and you can tell them why you're calling. Getting that permission really improves the quality of the call because at that point, like they have a minute to actually like hear you out. And if they're a buyer, they usually do give you an opportunity if you're not sounding like a complete robot or a complete newbie. So going into, not sounding like a robot basically means your tonality needs to be on point. So you can't sound desperate. You can't sound overly scripted. You can't sound like you need the sale and you're so commission hungry. Like people can smell that. Guy named Josh Braun, he calls this commission breath. I've learned a lot from him as well. But basically, you got to just focus on making sure that you sound like a real person, you sound confident, you have a script. I do recommend using a script, but have it practiced so it doesn't sound like a script. And make sure that you're just doing it the same every single time. And then you can figure out what's going on, what's working and what's not, right? So again, 50% conversation rate, but if you're seeing anywhere from 25 to 35%, you're on the right track. But again, this is like what you want to be shooting for. All right, next one here, call booking, right? So 25% means they've agreed to a call and they've booked it in, ideally using Calendly. So, if you're below this, you're at a 10% rate, you're doing okay, but really like you want to be trying to get to at least 25%. And so here's what's broken. If they're allowing you to give your pitch, but you're not able to book them in, your discovery questions aren't good enough. So you're not uncovering real pain points. Your value articulation is not good enough. So what that means is you can't clearly explain what's in it for them. They don't know why they should take the next step. Objection handling is another challenge. They're giving you a little bit of pushback. You're crumbling. You don't know what to say. So ideally, you have an understanding of what your top 5 or your top 10 objections are, and then you can build some scripts around objection handling. You can work those into your scripts, and then just continue to hone those over time. And then ideally, you get a couple of good discovery questions in. You just qualify if they're the right person, they have the pain, and they could potentially benefit from your solution. You want to be prescriptive with that next step. Usually, if you're leaving it to chance or you're not being super clear on what that next step should be, that's where people kind of fall apart. So assume the close. In this case, you don't need to close a deal, but the close in a cold call is closing for the meeting. All right, next step is going to be a show up rate. So similar concept as before, but you want to have an 80% show up rate, right? So what that means is if it's below that, you don't have a good confirmation process, you haven't sent those follow-ups, you don't have the follow-up sequence, you haven't reinforced value, you haven't shared case studies, you haven't shown proof, you haven't given them any indication of your process, you haven't given them enough times of availability. And again, like if they're not showing up, sometimes they just simply aren't qualified or they're not the right fit. So just make sure, again, like you want to be talking to the right person at these companies. And so that's pretty simple, similar to the last one. And so the last one here, again, it's qualified rate. So ideally, you have the same metrics for qualified. So 50, right? So 50%, qualification rate. If you're below that, if you're below 40% or 30%, again, what could be broken? Your lead magnet, you're getting tire kickers, your messaging is attracting tire kickers, your targeting is just simply not right. Your discovery framework's not good, you're not uncovering the pain points properly, you're not amplifying those pains, you're not creating any urgency to actually take next steps, and you're not really meeting with the right people, right? So you probably need somebody who's going to hold some budget. So if you're taking meetings, you're running an enterprise sale, you might be working with, managers and directors early on, but if you're simply not getting the right people on the phone who can actually buy, you're just going to be spinning your wheels and never actually closing deals and hearing from people who might be interested, but they have no decision making power. So make sure that you're getting those decision makers looped on the call. So if you're calling somebody who isn't a decision maker and they agree to a call, try to push to get that person on that next call. Pretty simple. So let's talk about bottleneck analysis. So pretty simply, right? High level, let's talk about the math. 1,000 calls, assume 10% connection. So you have 100 connects, assuming 50% conversion rate. That's 50 conversations. That'll book you 12 meetings at a 25% booking rate. At an 80% show rate, you'll have 10 meetings showed. At a 50% qualification rate, you should have 5 qualified opportunities. 5 qualified opportunities. You should be closing, at least one of those, ideally, right? So that's how 1,000 dials can convert into one net new opportunity closed. Now, again, this is going to be dependent very much on your target audience, your market, how inundated with calls they are. So that dialing number could go up or down. But again, you want to just think about those downstream conversions. And so in terms of like bottleneck analysis, focus. If your connect rate is low, fix your list quality and your calling times. If your conversion rate is low, your opening hook is garbage, get that on lock. If your booking rate is low, you're not creating urgency, you're not creating enough pain, your value propositions aren't good enough. If your show rates are too low, your confirmation process, your appointment setting process is broken. And if your qualification rate is low, then you're just simply attracting the wrong people. So fix all these things and then you'll be in a much better spot. So really the thing to focus on is that most people just try to make more dials. Winners will fix their biggest conversion leaks first. Simple. Okay, so now let's talk about the high-level solution framework that will help you win the game. So now you know where you need to look for those holes inside of your boat. Here's the most critical part, the order of operations, right? So most companies will try to optimize everything at once, like we talked about. It's like trying to fix that sinking boat while it's still taking on water. Here's the systematic approach that works. First, you want to stop the bleeding. So again, identify your biggest hole, plug it immediately for cold email. If your reply rates are low, you want to fix your deliverability first, right? You want to fix your list first. Don't even think about fixing things like subject lines or button colors if your reply rates are really low, right? Button colors, a little bit of a different story, but if you're doing paid ads, it's going to be relevant to you. If your positive reply rate is below 8%, fix your ICP and your messaging. If you're doing cold calling, your connect rate is low, you want to fix your calling, your list times. We already went over this, but really the rule is don't touch anything until your biggest leak is fixed first. Next, systematize what works. So once you've plugged that biggest hole, systematize it, meaning build a system around it and a process so it stays fixed. So what this means is create checklists and processes around list hygiene, message testing, response protocols, quality controls. Just make sure you're getting consistent execution every time. And so this is where most people fail. They try to fix something once and it's in their head, or they haven't communicated it properly, or they haven't documented it. And so by doing this, this is actually going to allow you to replicate the execution and keep your quality standards really, really high. Next step is optimizing your secondary metrics. And so again, right, you've fixed your key big issues. Now you want to fix those things that are a little bit downstream. So now, you've found some value propositions that work. Now start to layer in more, or perhaps start testing different calls to action, or start testing different sub different verticals that could potentially resonate with your messaging, right? Optimize your calling times if your connect rates are already good, like as examples. So the key is you're optimizing from a position of strength, not desperately trying to find and fix the whole system at once. Then the last phase here is scale up what's proven, right? So this is when you can safely add more volume. So more lists, more campaigns, additional team members, automation, AI tools, all the AI sales agents to, that you could ever dream of. This is when you want to start applying those. You want to get that advanced attribution, that advanced ad tracking, and, all of these things really only make sense when you've actually created a process that has consistency, that's actually working, that's actually converting. The focus is you want to start thinking like an engineer. So what you want to ask is, what's the constraint that is limiting our inputs? What's limiting our throughput? This shift in thinking is what separates those from scaling smoothly to those that burn cash, try to hire their way out of a broken system, right? So here's the thing. I can keep talking about these frameworks and these benchmarks all day, but here's the truth. Knowing exactly what to look for and actually finding it in your business are two completely different things. Most of you watching this video are going to be nodding along. Maybe you'll take some notes. Maybe you'll apply some of it. But most will just go back to doing exactly what you're doing before. That's honestly human nature. But some of you, the ones who are taking this seriously, the ones who are trying to actually scale their systems and grow their go-to-markets to those new heights, to those huge goals, they're thinking, hey, this all makes sense, but I actually need help diagnosing my exact situation. That's exactly what we do when we help. This is why I created the go-to-market audit. This isn't a sales call designed as an audit. It's not generic advice you can find on YouTube. It's not some junior guy who's like reading a checklist. Here's what it actually is. It's me personally going through your system, analyzing and looking at your data. We'll go through all of the steps in your process. We can put together a prioritized action plan showing you exactly which holes to fix, a specific benchmark for your situation, and some 3 high leverage activities or tasks that you can do that will actually move the needle in your business over the next 30 days. I only do a handful of these a month, not because I'm trying to create fake scarcity, but because I'm only a human and I only have so much time. I run a business, good amount of time working with those who are committed and looking to solve their challenges. So if you're a business, you're a revenue leader, you're a founder, you're looking to scale your go-to-market, and you're wondering what's that next step to take next, hop on a call with me. Go to levergrowth.io. We'll hop on a call. We'll discuss your situation. Again, we'll talk about those steps, give you an action plan. And if it makes sense to actually work together, then we can do that too. But really, that's going to be the process in a brief nutshell. You're ready to stop guessing and start systematically attacking your go-to-market strategy so you can hit those goals that you always know you've been able to do, then book a call. We'll talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.